Good morning, everybody, and we're here live today with the amazing Suzi Dent, and we're going to have a bit of a chat about quite an incredible time in Suzi's life. And I'm just going to give you a trigger warning now. We are going to be talking about things around the Me Too movement and sexual predators. So if it's something that may make you feel really uncomfortable, I'm just letting you know now that what Suzi has to say may make you feel uncomfortable, but it's a really important topic. And it's really important because what Suzi did was she stood up to the bastards and used her voice to make the world a better place. And this has triggered in Suzi a desire to change the justice system. So, Suzi, thanks for coming on today.
Annette, thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
Hello, they're all waving. They're joining us now. Now, this is Suzi's and my third attempt at a Facebook Live, and this one's going to work. So
yes, it is.
Yeah, hang on to your seats. Now, Suzi, just to give people a little bit of a background on what you've done through your life now, you've had an incredible career. You started off working as a hair and makeup artist, something that you still do.
Yes, I do. I started off studying to become and worked as a hair and makeup artist in the film and television industry and a special effects artist. And I specialise in television rather than film because I prefer working in commercials and on dramas rather than on film, but mainly commercials. That's what I've done a lot of. So I started off my career in Sydney when there wasn't very many people in the industry and there was one school in the entire country and people would come from all over Australia and New Zealand to study in Sydney. And now, of course, there's every little girl wants to be a makeup artist now. So there's almost a school in every suburbs. Next to the corner McDonald's, there's a become a makeup artist school.
And probably a plethora of online courses now that we're all pivoting.
Yes. It's my favourite are the ones that do themselves and go, look, I can do this. I'm fantastic. Like, oh, that's wonderful, darling. You've got a beautiful face, a beautiful bone structure, but can you turn the brush around and do it on someone else? No, sometimes not.
No, that's a hard thing. It's like I've tried to do that and I've looked at the person and gone, maybe an extra in a horror movie, perhaps.
And that's one of my favourite things to do is zombies, I've got to say. But I do, I'm really lucky in my career of 37 years now. I have worked with 4 prime ministers. I've worked with lots and lots of celebrities, some of our most famous actors and entertainers in our entire country, which is great. So I've had a wonderful career and met some amazing people. Most of the time it's been a really great experience, and sometimes it hasn't, because sometimes people have massive egos which get in the way.
Look, I'm not surprised. I remember when I was, when we were talking the other day, something you said triggered a memory in me. And I did work experience at one of the Brisbane TV stations when I was 17. And it really turned me off working in TV. The egos, like a couple of the news journalists were just so awful and horrible. And an incident with a very well-known celebrity who thought that my leg and my thigh was his plaything. So it was like, I'm out of here. Before we get into talking about the thing that you've done to make a difference, I'm really curious I know that that you used to be a bit of a tomboy, never wore a dress, and that you had a mother who was someone who was quite threatened by you. How does someone go from that background to getting into makeup artistry?
Oh, well, the thing is, the makeup's a creative thing. I'm an artist, and I express myself through hair and face and makeup. And being blonde, you can't see my eyelashes. They're completely invisible. So when I discovered mascara when I was younger, it was like, oh, my gosh, I've got a face. I look like a real girl. I have real eyes. And my mother was an Avon lady. So I was surrounded by makeup when I was young, especially those little tiny, I used to love them, they were lipstick samples, and they were tiny little white things, and they were so cut and chiseled. Do you remember those? And they smelled amazing.
My mum
And
was Mary Kay.
so I was kind of addicted. I was addicted to the smell of grease paint, if you like. And always through school, I was either in front of the camera because I'm a singer. And I made my first record when I was 11 in primary school, singing as Nancy in Oliver, singing Pa. We can't sing, we were that good. So yes, that's right. So that was a bit of fun. But yeah, there you go. I've totally forgot what you asked me because I've completely digressed and gone way too back and far back in my youth.
It's beautiful. I didn't actually know that you're a singer. So there's another little notch on your headboard. You're an incredibly talented human being. Now, I was curious because I know the other day you were saying that your mother was quite threatened by you, and you really diminished yourself to avoid her attention. So was makeup artistry an escape for you because you could then create the faces that you wanted to see?
I don't think it was actually. My mother, today's term would be called narcissist. But, you have to be careful when you refer to someone as a narcissist if they haven't been diagnosed. Not that any narcissist would ever get diagnosed because they don't think there's anything wrong with them. But, she had a jealousy issue. I have quite good legs. I've got great legs. When I was younger, my mother was a bit obsessed with my legs, as have been lots of people in my life, which is nice that I have great legs and I'm really grateful for it. But when your mother brings them up every time she sees them, and she gets a bit obsessed with what you look like, and it makes her feel diminished as a person, and that changes your mother-daughter relationship that wasn't really there in the first place because she never wanted a girl. To fit in, to make my mother comfortable, I realised that if I covered up my legs and I didn't wear any mascara, I made myself look as plain as I could. And it made it easier for my mother to spend time around me. She didn't seem to be jealous as soon as she saw me. And I certainly didn't go out of my way to get dressed up because, as you mentioned before, I'm a tomboy. So, I was quite comfortable wearing shorts and things like that. But when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I did wear dresses because, as you do when you're younger. But my mother kind of affected my how I saw myself. There was very strict dress codes, nothing sleeveless, nothing fitted. My mother had a real body image of a problem of her own, and we've all heard how our parents pass down crap to us. I think as a parent, you do the best with what you've got. I think my mother did the best with who she was and what she did. She did a lot of bad shit as well, and I wish her all the best, really. But it did set me up to. I was also in a time in the 80s where men used to touch, and I used to get, I felt like I kind of went through life back then with a neon sign over my head that said, touch me, because each job I had from the age of 12, because I started work part-time when I was 12, I got felt up by men, which really is not good, as we all know. There's so many women now, and, in the whole Me Too movement that we've discovered, so many of us have been felt up. And all my times of being felt up pretty much were in work situations. It doesn't matter how old you are. I was still 12 hours working, So again, that covering myself up and covering my legs up and wearing baggy clothes, and I have, I have large breasts, and I did have from the age of 12. So covering them up in baggy shirts and strapping them down in a couple of bras to try and make myself look as flat and sexless as possible helped me move through life in an easier way. And so that was pretty much me diminishing myself. It used to make me uncomfortable. Back in the day, women used to say to you, there was a saying, women would say, oh my God, you've got fantastic legs, you bitch. Remember that?
Yes.
Like, oh my God, you bitch. But it's really hurtful it's like it's not a compliment. It's a jealous thing. And because I was raised with the jealous thing, I was really quite conscious of that sort of stuff. So I really did move through life better with women and men and my mother by covering up. And that's where I stayed for like over 30 years. I think it probably did affect the way the work I could have gotten because I really couldn't put a dress on. I call it my frock fear, my fear of frocks. I kind of had a real issue with putting tight fitted clothes on or anything that was kind of girly or showed off my figure at all. It really, I couldn't walk out of the house like that. So I'd wear suits and pantsuits and things. But I'm pretty sure it did probably lose me stage opportunities because I couldn't wear the clothes they wanted me to wear in speaking and all that sort of stuff as a makeup artist, because I climbed to the top of my career and have won multiple awards and had opportunities where I could have, spoken on stage, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't conform to, looking nice. You can't do everything in runners and baggy shorts to your knees, mate. It just doesn't work.
That's so true. But what it did do is, like, so when did you had a bit of an epiphany a few years ago, didn't you? And you did something totally out there that normally women in their 50s don't do. Tell us a little bit about your time as a beauty queen.
Yes, well, I am. I should get my crown. Mrs. Earth Australia. My titles are Mrs. Earth Australia 2017. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hair Flick. Mrs. Earth Health, which is my international title. I have a lifelong title of Mrs. Earth Ambassador, and I was also named Mrs. Role Model of the Year out of the whole pageant system in Australia. And I went into the pageant system in 2017, something that I was asked to go into it. And it was one of those moments in time. I'm a big believer that life sends us messages, right? And life sent me a doozy of a message by having this woman contact me to approach to go in the Mrs. Earth Australia pageant. And because I never wore dresses, because at the time I was 54, nearly 55 at the time. And after I picked myself up off the floor laughing, I checked them out, and they supported this charity who collected new and used shoes called Souls for Souls, and that really appealed to me because I'm also a wardrobe stylist. I dress people, so I do a lot of secondhand shopping and making and all that sort of stuff. So I love the charity and the idea of it. And at that time in my life, my husband was in year 6 of depression and anger management, and things were not really good at home. Things were really angry, and my husband and I were stuck in a Groundhog Day. We needed a change. I'd started listening to motivational things on my daily walk and motivational people, and what I learned was that to make change in our lives, we have to change ourselves. And then this message came to me, hey, there's this thing, and I realised that I was having my own sliding doors moment. Yes, I know. And I'm like, can I take door left or door right? So it was like, if I could, putting on a dress was going to make me uncomfortable. And this charity was amazing. And by the same token, my husband has a transport company, and going into doing the shoes and shipping the shoes meant he would be involved in something entirely different, and we'd have something to do together that was different. So I said yes to this amazing opportunity. It took me on this big journey of stretching myself and overcoming my body image problems and my self-esteem problems by putting on dresses and having a gown made, the first ever gown I'd ever made. I had to learn how to wear high heel shoes because orthotics don't go in high heel shoes. And I've been wearing orthotics since I was 28. So, and I didn't want to bugger a knee. So I'd stand at the edge of my bed they were the little heels for the first one. I'd just stand there, and I was so uncomfortable. And I learned how to walk and how to glide the hips. Otherwise, oh yeah. And then I went down to Melbourne. I threw myself into it because they told me that 56 was the cutoff year. So this was the last year that I could possibly win this. And I'm a classic overachiever. I go in things to win, not to lose. So I do my best. I practice my walking. I immerse myself into the pageant industry because there's a formula. You've got to be good at interview, and you've got to, and all the charity stuff I was doing lots of charity, making appearances. I had this great marketing idea for this company called, I went to this company, Bartercard, and spoke to them and spoke to the CEO and the man who actually formed the company. And I said, mate, you guys, you sponsor men who drive fast, hit fast and run fast. What about a middle-aged beauty queen collecting shoes for charity? And he thought it was such a great idea. My idea was that they opened their offices all around the country as for a certain period of time as drop spots for people to donate the shoes there, because Souls for Souls were based in Adelaide, and then we'd organise to pick them all up and ship them all to Adelaide. So they said yes, and that's what they did. And they sponsored me, and I had PR, I had press, and I was on weekend TV and in local newspapers and women's magazines. The 55-year-old tomboy to beauty queen. Then I went down to Melbourne and competed with I think 16 other women, and I won, which is amazing. I know, it was great. And then 3 months later, I found myself in Vegas, which was also amazing, competing with 36 women from all around the world, who some of whom I'm sure were born with high heel shoes on, who had all competed in their different states, you know. And there's me, the second oldest competitor. I just embraced the whole thing. I was just on this ride, couldn't believe it. Half of these women I could have given birth to. So there was they didn't know, it didn't matter what age I was competing with 21 up. It was married. So it was an amazing time. I had a great time. I practiced by then in the really big heels, because when you're at the show, like they say in baseball, you have to wear the big heels. So I took this numbing cream with me, the stuff that you put on if you get tattoos. And before I went and wore my shoes, I numbed my entire feet, so I couldn't feel my feet when I went out on stage.
There's a tip for you ladies. That's hilarious.
And I did everything, and I did really well in interview, and I had that magic moment of being one of the 6 invited on stage to talk. You know, that the moment we go, I like furry animals and babies, and I want to save the world. I got to be one of those, which is great, and have the baby backstage with the things on, so I couldn't hear the question. It was such an amazing experience to go through this stuff at 55. I was just on this huge cloud, you know. I was like, you know, pinching myself and laughing on the inside and having a great time all at the same time. So I did all that, answered my question really well. Got to the stage of having I got to stand there and have my name read out as 3rd runner-up in the world as Mrs. Earth Health. I got crowned on stage and sashed. Came home with a title. I had fans in the audience who I didn't even know, some random American people that came up, and they were standing at the edge of the stage. We go, look, we love you, Mrs. Australia. They gave me a big bunch of flowers when I got 3rd. It was so fun. It was like the best experience ever. And when I came home on the plane with Dean Kane, right, Superman himself. I was business class because my husband cashed in his super, so I could travel business class and have a whole experience, because life had been so crap up to then. And he was right on board and feeling so much better because I was winning and, leading by example, and he was really happy and things were working. So, yeah, it was a very amazing experience. Got a selfie with Dean Kane. It was very exciting. Came back home. 2 hours later, had enough time to have a shower. I was being interviewed on Sunrise, who were doing a big show on Weekend Sunrise. The camera crew were in my house, talking with me and my husband and my son and my auntie Lorraine, which is awesome. So I included all the family, and it was been such an amazing journey for all of us. It's opened me up to the world and to fans all over the world, of people being inspired by the normal Botox-free me. Who went over and did something extraordinary that, you know, most of us don't even think of doing. However, doing it, you know what? I conquered my fears about myself. I raised my confidence, my self-esteem to equal levels, because you can fake being confident, but you can't fake not having self-esteem. And I found my true authentic self along the way, babe. You know, and I loved it. I had so much. I love wearing dresses now. I like getting dressed up, do my face, and I curl my hair. The world of motivational speaking is open to me. I've spoken around the world. I've won an international award in India as an inspirational woman over there, which is amazing. I've spoken to people about the Me Too movement. I work as an MC. My funny side has come out. Well, I've always been funny. You and I, we've done funny things together because you're funny. You know,
we did.
So it's just been the most amazing few years. My husband is doing so much better. He's not depressed anymore. We've really lifted out of what our lives were, all because I said yes to this one thing. And it's completely changed better in our lives. And it's just wonderful. So
Gwyneth Paltrow, look out. She's got nothing on you, mate. So what's really interesting out of all of that is, like, besides everything, that's an amazing story. I will look forward to reading your book, is that you've lived this life where you've you've diminished yourself, you made yourself small, and then you've come out the other end that in your mid-50s to say, you know what, you're never too old to change your life. Suzi, that moment where you've been offered this opportunity and discovered your confidence and your self-esteem, around the same time, the Me Too movement was like going off. There were women coming out and saying, this is what's been happening in the workplace, not just in the world of TV, but across workplaces in general. And at the time, Rolf Harris was in the court system being tried as a sexual predator. You had an experience with Rolf Harris, didn't you, that then triggered a whole different scenario of events, which has made you an even more incredible woman. Can you tell us about how you you interacted with Rolf Harris and what happened when you spoke up?
It was in 1986, and I was working as a makeup artist at Channel 7 Studios for a production company that was doing promos, what we call promos, which is like little commercials, if you like, for Rolf Harris's upcoming show that he'd flown out for to do out in Australia. I was probably about, I was in year 3 of my career. So it starts slowly, your career. I was still working as a waitress and stuff like that. And it was very exciting to know that I was going to be working with Rolf Harris, who was given the red carpet treatment at Channel 7 because he was the biggest star.
Wasn't he? Him and his wobble board.
Yeah, wobble board.
Yes.
Yeah.
We grew up with him and went, you know, like, wow, this guy's awesome. Like, he was around kids all the time, and he was a bit
art, and he was entertaining. And, you know, I remember watching him in black and white TV when I was a kid. You know, he's always doing children's stuff. He always seemed to be, you know, well, he, you know, presented as happy and jovial, and, you know, he was loved. Huge star in Australia, loved all around the world. England's national treasure, and a very loved entertainer. He painted the Queen, who was a friend of the royal family. Very big deal in life, the universe, and everything. He'd risen to great heights in his career, which is, I suppose, what all entertainers want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So you would have seen that and gone, oh, wow, what a great opportunity to meet someone who's so famous.
He was my real first famous person. And I was very excited to meet him. And I was introduced to him and took him into my makeup room, which is a fairly small makeup room, of the private makeup rooms. And he was sitting in his, I sat him in his makeup chair, which is a bit like an old-fashioned barber's chair with like the high back, and you can sit people back and they've got legs, and in front you've got a mirror. I'm standing on the right. That's camera left. I'm standing on his right. And there's a doorway, and his brother, Bruce, was standing there, who was his manager. And I turned around to face him because you've got to look at people to check out their skin, you know. And as soon as I did that, he stuck his hand underneath the armrest of the chair and ran his hand all the way up from my knees, all the way up my leg, underneath my shorts. Now, I was wearing baggy shorts at the time because we've already established that that's all I used to wear. There's a denim shorts. It was basically my uniform of denim shorts, a big leather belt at the front, which hung down, white Hanes T-shirt, little white socks, and black Dog Martens was pretty much what I used to wear. And the T-shirts were never fitted on me. I always wore men's T-shirts. Still do now. I don't wear women's T-shirts. Don't wear anything fitted. So that was a bit of a surprise to have him do that in front of his brother. And I kind of turned back to the mirror and thought, okay, wow, I can't believe this guy works with children. This is, you know, wow, okay. So anyway, we went, got him all finished, and his brother went away, took him into the studio, and for the rest of the day, each time I went up to him to touch him up, and from the very beginning, actually the very beginning of the shoot, the director was around his age, right? I hadn't worked with a director before, and I never worked with him again. So they're around the same age, and I believe that they thought that the casting couch was alive and well in their world, because whilst I was standing in front of him to make sure he was all prepared and everything, doing my job, they were both discussing my legs and what I looked like as if I wasn't there, like I was a piece of meat. Now, in this day and age, that can't happen anymore because it used to happen too much to women in the past. In the 80s, that sort of shit happened all the time. This, however, and it happened to me quite a lot, like I said about the neon sign, you know. This, however, this was done in a room full of people, other men who were there, the cameraman, the sound guy, you know, the lighting guy, everyone that was there, a small crew. But yeah, they were both looking at my legs and talking about me. And throughout the shoot, each time that I would go up to blot his face of sweat or whatever, he would touch me. He'd either put his hands up my shorts, he would grab my belt and pull me towards him so he could pretend to crotch grind.
Yeah.
He kept, yeah, it was a bit ooh. We didn't, thank God, because, you know, I stopped. But, you know, I had a rip on my leg because, you know, the ribs are back in again, but they're a lot more modest back then. And he'd keep trying to shove his hand in the rip in the top of my thigh, and I kept grabbing his wrist to stop his hand going in. There's all these men standing around. This is me working, trying to do my
So there's
job.
an audience to your sexual assault.
Yeah. And it went on for over 6 hours. So probably 24 times. I ended up, I stayed at the back of the studio, so maybe you couldn't see me as much, but he'd just call for me. Even just because, you know, because it became a bit of a plaything then, because you can't, back then you couldn't say, get your grubby little mitts off me. The women weren't allowed to do that because it was always thrown back against you in an aggressive way, like it was your fault. It's like somehow you'd instigated it, you know. So many times I was told if you didn't look like this, I wouldn't be able to lose, you know, I lose control of myself because of the way you look, you know, so it's my fault.
Yeah, it's all an excuse, isn't it? It's just
always. And as a makeup artist working with film stars, that my job is to not upset the talent, right? So you can't upset the talent. These people cost a lot of money. It affects the crew, my career, their career, the studio, whatever else is planned after that. Sometimes these people can completely have a dummy spit, so you have to grin and bear it, which I did, which a lot of women had to do back then in all sorts of job situations, which I did in other job situations as well, you know. However, I tried the back of the room and then I'd stay outside the studio, and there was two young guys there, well, more my age, early 20s, who really sympathised but couldn't say anything because they were at the beginning of their career. So when he wanted me, they'd come out and get me. So I didn't have to stand in there because out of sight, out of mind, you know. Then it would be till the very end till he really needed me, rather than double up on the visits for touching, you know. And at the end of every shoot, it's our job also to take the makeup off the talent. And back then it was really thick makeup because it was video, you know. So we'd pack on the makeup. The more makeup you wore, the better you looked on video, seriously. But there was no way that I was going to go back into that little room with him by myself and take off his makeup. Because if he was going to touch me up all day in front of, you know, 7 other people, 7 men, then there's no way I was going to be alone with him. So I hid in a cupboard. There was a broom cupboard, a big enough one to actually get into. We was like the janitor's cupboard, and it was in the hallway. So I could look out through the crack and look down the hallway where he was kind of waiting for me. The powers that be had come downstairs again. And they were waiting around for a few minutes, for me probably, and I'd left all my stuff on the bench, so it looked like I was coming back. And then they just guided him out the front door to probably his waiting vehicle. And I waited till they left, and then I went and packed my kit up when it was safe for me to go in there. And I went to the studio, the woman who is in charge of Channel 7 Studios as the makeup head, because I worked for Channel 7 for all different things, you know. And I told her what had happened. I told her that I was really pissed off, that I just had a really bad day with a dirty old man. And she said to me, I thought you knew. I said, knew what? She said, his nickname's the Octopus. He does this to all makeup artists. And I thought at the time I was really pissed off that she hadn't given me a heads up. And I was really, really annoyed about that. However, women were a bit less nice back then than they are now. And she also passed a message on to me from upstairs, the powers that be, to congratulate me on how I had behaved, basically. And how I conducted myself. It was how I had conducted myself. They congratulated me. And I thought, wow, I've only just complained. How do you know? And then I realised that they were all sitting upstairs in the control room where they used to sit and watch the videos and watch all the monitors, and there could have been a dozen more men up there watching. And of course they would be up there because he was a superstar. So nobody stopped anything and they all watched. And then, you know, after a while, it's funny. I told my parents, I called my friends that night, you know, I didn't keep it a secret ever. It didn't ruin my sex life or anything like that. I had a very disappointing bad day with a dirty old man. I saw who he was from being really close to him, because we invade people's space. You know, when you get up close to people, you can see into their eyes. So I could see who he was. He wasn't a very nice person. And then, so I just kind of left it. And in 2014 was the very beginning of what became the Me Too movement in the entertainment industry. And Operation New Tree in England, which was about taking down pedophiles. And Rolf Harris was part of that, and Jimmy Savile, and a whole lot of big English men. And at the same time in Australia, just before that, Robert Hughes, who was the dad on Hey Dad.
It was quite shocking, wasn't it? Because as kids, we had grown up watching these people. They were our idols. And I know as a, you know, I'm not that far behind you in age, that when you went into the workplace, nobody warned you. Nobody told you that you would be pretty like daily fighting to maintain personal space. If not personal space, the words that would assault your ears just because you're a woman.
Absolutely. I always used to say to people, especially the entertainment industry, that I used to work in the circus, because there was no rules. There's no H&R department. There still isn't really. So if there's any problems, there's no one to complain to. And in a case like big shows like Hey Dad, it's money. And the thing is like that, I worked on Hey Dad a couple of times. Well, the good thing is Robert Hughes was found guilty. Sarah Monahan, the very brave actress who, you know, waited till she was an adult woman and would be listened to and taken seriously, came forward and encouraged her braveness, and telling her story encouraged other victims of his to come forward and also share their story. So he got 10 years, and I believe he's still in jail. And at the same time, then the Rolf Harris thing's happening. And another brave young woman, an Australian, came forward and told her story about being molested by Rolf Harris when she was a young teenager. And she was a dancer as part of a dance troupe that was having something to do with the show. And she came forward, and I watched her on TV, and I knew that she wasn't lying from what she was saying. And I knew that it obviously affected her life. So it didn't take me long, in fact, not very long at all. As I Googled, I was so moved by her story, I knew I had to come forward to support her. Because the press at the time were dragging her through the coals, and it wasn't good enough. She'd made the mistake of being a novice and not being in the industry. She'd joined with Max Markson, who was a massive PR agent, who sold her story and somebody's soul, and threw her to the wolves. And I couldn't handle that happening to her. So I Googled Operation New Tree, and I sent off an email with a few choice words like the octopus and what my experience was. They came back to me the next day with, when can we speak to you? When can we have a phone? When can we actually speak to you? And then that began my journey of working with Operation New Tree, which is attached to Scotland Yard, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Just the words, work with Scotland Yard. Just telling my story and coming forward, I was called a bad character witness. There was a lot of people that came forward. It made a difference that I'd never kept it a secret. The British police came out to Australia and interviewed friends of mine in Sydney and in Newcastle, who also were witnesses to my story, you know, all way back when, because they're my best mates and still are. The judge chose me because I had to write him a letter. We all had to write a letter to him, an email actually. At the time, the bad character witnesses, the Consolidated Press in the UK wanted the names of the bad character witnesses. They wanted to know who we were so they could do their magic with us before the trial even began. And I've worked in the press for a long time. I'm not stupid. I knew what was about to happen. And I was asked how I felt about that and would I still be prepared to come forward. And I wrote a very powerful email to the judge, and I told him that if he felt that it was okay for my name to be dragged through the coals and for him to throw me to the media, then so be it. That was fine, because if I didn't come forward and tell my story, then these women would still be silenced. And Operation Nutri has given me a chance to come forward and be heard. If I don't do that, then no change will happen. Silence doesn't happen. Change doesn't happen with silence. And funnily enough, he chose me because of that. And before I even knew I was going to court, I was at home watching TV. I was watching the Channel 10 news, and all of a sudden there's like a split screen, and on the right-hand side of the screen were my words to the judge, right? And on the left-hand side of this male newsreader reading my words, word for word, the email that I'd sent to the judge, right? And I'm listening to this and I started laughing. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, I don't know how they got hold of this, but I'm now public property. Everything I say and everything I do is going to be on public display. So I knew I put myself out there. It was certainly a moment that I realised how big it was. And then I got chosen after that to go to court, and I'm very proud to have been chosen. To go over to court to tell my story, my truth about my bad day with Dirty Old Man, something I've never kept a secret. I became the strongest witness for the prosecution, which was lovely. I didn't get intimidated by him. I was so looked after by the police, both before I went and when I was over there. They picked me up from the airport. I was allowed to take my girlfriend with me. They paid for everything, all expenses paid. They took me to court through the back way the day after I arrived. So smuggled through so the press didn't get us or anything like that, or get a look at us, hidden in a room. We're in the room for probably an hour and a half, me and my girlfriend Ellie. And then they broke for lunch, and this lovely man who was the court clerk took us into the courtroom, which was empty, and showed us where he was going to be, where Rolf was going to be. And it was in this like huge, big, well, probably perspex, but looked like this big glass cage you could see through, with like trestle table with papers on it and stuff. And in front of that was like where the judge was, and the jury were on the left-hand side. And I was going to be standing there, and where the press was going to be, and there was microphones all over the floors and all over the tables. And it was really good to have a tour to know what to expect when I walked in the room, because not soon after it was time to walk in the room, And while I was in, I tend to, it was a really big deal being part of the biggest court case like this in the world. The press were on it every single day. It was all over the news in our country, all over Europe, all over England, New Zealand, Malta. It was huge. It was very important. And I didn't believe for a while before I actually came forward that they were actually going to do it. So I was really pleased that they were, Operation Nutri and the British police really went for it in a big way. And they made sure that they crossed their T's and dotted their I's and got everything right, And I was told when I walked in by my guy, Tony, PC, come on, my constable. No, what was he? No, I just called him Tony. Before I went in, just to look at the judge and the jury and the two prosecutors, but not to look at him. And I jokingly said to him, I said, "Oh, mate, can't I do this as I walk past?" He goes, "No, Suzi, no," because he wasn't sure whether I would or not. And because this is me, I'm a little bit feisty at times. So I did what I was told, and they kind of smuggled me through another door. It was almost like a cupboard door to get into the court, so it wouldn't be seen by all the press. Because I was given lifetime anonymity, which meant that my name and my visual appearance couldn't be described. Right, so I was called SD in court. Much imagination there.
Yeah, they thought long about that one.
Yeah, I walked through the door and it was absolutely packed, full of people. There's press everywhere, all with their pads and pens. Rolf was in his cage to the left, absolutely packed. They had a seat for my girlfriend Ellie, and I dumped my bag there, walked up. Went up to the stand and did my thing and looked where I was supposed to look, didn't look at him once. I talked about the underpants I was wearing to the jury because it made a difference to the number of times that he kept touching me and running his hand up my outer thighs. Because back then it was kind of the beginning of the G-string, and they were a triangle at the front and a triangle at the back and a string that went round the side. And that was all the fashion back then. And that was my favourite knickers. So it didn't really matter how high he went up my leg with my baggy shorts, he still couldn't find my knickers. So I talked about that. So I had to talk about all sorts of things. However, you know, I was cool, calm and collected, totally fine. And because I had myself all psyched and ready to go. Because for my hour and a half in my little room, I played one song over and over and over and over and over and over again. And this is going to sound funny, but it was the Happy Song by Pharrell Williams. And it wasn't, it just kept me, because I'm happy, da, da, da. And I just had this going over and over in my head so that I could keep, because it's a known fact that you can actually raise the, I think the dopamine levels with happy music. You can keep your brain really calm and centered. It's so important that I was calm and centered, didn't get distracted by anything or anybody. We were kind of in the room by ourselves, and then I met this one woman who turns out she was there for Tonya, who was there the same day as me. None of us were allowed to see each other, and I actually took my headset out and spoke to her, and I got to say to her, please tell Tonya that I'm here for her, that I saw her on a current affair and I'm here for her. I came forward for her. And I gave her a big cuddle and I said, give this to her, which made me feel really, really strengthened me before I went into court, which was great. So I'm in there, I did what I had to do, and I talked about my knickers, and I didn't look at the wrong place. And at the very end, his lawyer said to me, and this was her job, she called me a liar. And it's really weird, but I'm so honest, and I hadn't lied, and I talked about my knickers, and it's such an emotion. It's quite heightened. I couldn't tell you how long I was on the stand for or anything, but it felt so bad to have someone call me a liar that I snorted with derision. It was like indignation. Sorry, I don't even know how I did it. It was like the shock to my emotional system. And then I was told to get off the stand. And as soon as I got off the stand, I started to get angry. And I looked at him in his glass cage, and I looked at nobody else but him. In fact, I glared at him, and he was right there. And I just glared at him as I strode down the aisle, but in between all these huge people. I couldn't keep my eyes off him. I just glared at him all the way around. He didn't once make eye contact with me. He turned his entire body away as I was coming this way, completely away from me. All the press behind him. I was so mad. I just bolted out of there. I grabbed my bag with my left hand. I had such momentum going out of the courtroom because I was getting so pissed off, and all the emotions were coming to surface that I pushed the door. It was a really thick door, so I thought it was heavy. Nah, bang, bang! As I'm going out of this courtroom, I'm slamming out the courtroom. The cops come after me. My girlfriend's coming after me because they had nowhere to go. They're guiding me into this place. So they got me to this room, and then all the emotions come out of me, like the tears coming out of me. And I'm not a liar, and I'm angry, and all this huge emotion because it's all been building up for months leading up to the trial. And so I'm there, and I did my thing, and that was really good. And the guy who was in charge of the whole Operation U-Tree, he's standing in front of me, and he just took my hand and he said, thank you, Suzi, you were great. You're a really strong witness, and we so appreciate you coming forward. And what you did was so important, and you're so brave. And it was just like, oh, my God, I'd actually done something that had made a difference, hopefully, because we didn't know at the time whether he was going to get guilty or not. But I did something that was really important, and I came forward and put myself on the line to do something important, which is great. And after, everything, all my emotions subsided with another cup of tea, it was taken back to the hotel room with my girlfriend, which was great. The next day, the newspaper headlines, actually, I think it was that night, newspaper headlines. My favourite headline about the nameless, faceless me was Australian television makeup artist dramatically stares down Rolf Harris in court. And I'm like, that's me. That's me.
Yeah, you're a hero.
And my mates back home were like, go Suze, that's our girl. And I thought,
So,
I saw
Susie,
that and I thought, wow, hopefully, because it hadn't been going really well. Some of the witnesses had got really upset, had folded, if you like, a little bit under cross-examination because it's vicious and it's difficult. And I thought, well, that will give them some strength to see that and go, yes, yes, one of us has got through and got powerful, you know. So it was good. It was very positive. The very next day, I was discovered by the BBC, by this reporter who was a producer for a news show for the BBC, who hounded me for weeks, sometimes even about me doing a show with them. They'd black out my face. They'd change my accent, even though everybody knew I was an Australian television makeup artist because it was everywhere. I mean, the word the octopus came out of my mouth. All the stuff that went around Australia all came from me, you know. It was an interesting journey that I went on with her, and having worked in the press for so long, I decided I would play and see how far she'd go. So yeah, the blackface, the change my own show. I had no intention of making it about me. I had no intention of being the groping girl and having pictures of my legs, which they had photographs of me, of what I looked like when I was 23, and they were really good looking legs back then, and what I look now. So they would be released if I gave anybody permission, and then that would totally change what the trial was about. You know, it gives the press something to devour. It gives them a groping girl. What does she look like then? What does she look like now? And then you have all these keyboard warriors going, oh, I would have done it then. Would I do it now? Yeah, I'd do it now. And then you become this thing. And then I get abused and assaulted in a much bigger way all over the world. So I wasn't prepared to come forward like that. I was very happy to get anonymity, because then I didn't have to be, you know, hated by millions of Rolf lovers all over the world, which would have completely changed my life and the life of my family. However, justice is really important, and I've never been one of those people who stands back when she sees injustice happening. I've always been that sort of a person, so I couldn't help myself. I even came forward to the police, and then I told my husband what I'd done, you know, and that I was coming forward, that I'd done it, you know. And he knew I would have anyway, because he knew who I was, you know. And then we, you know, as the next month or so went on with the trial, or the next 3 weeks, and then I came home. I was in England for a month with my friend, and then he was found guilty, which is fantastic, and sentenced to 5 years and 9 months jail. He only served 3, which is fine. And people then found out who Rolf Harris was.
There's no coming back from that, is there?
No, there isn't. No. And we discovered that many of his victims were little girls, and he groomed his daughter's best friend. Women's lives were changed by this man who took advantage of his situation, his power, and his money to take what he wanted and not behave in the way that the rest of us are supposed to behave. And a lot of the time in situations like this, when people are very famous, it's about how much money they make for others. So a blind eye is turned. It's never just the responsibility of one in show business. It's the responsibility of many, you know. However, he was found guilty, which was great. And that really began because the Me Too movement, which really started with a vengeance 2 years later, we got to hear the tweet anyway. It had already begun in America. Really started, and what was really important was these historical sexual cases were being heard. Women like me were actually being believed. Rape victims were being believed. We were being listened to. We weren't being swept under the carpet. And there's power in that. There's power in communication. And with the Me Too movement and that tweet coming forward, and we now know there's so many of us, women and men, that have been sexually assaulted at work, had all sorts of stuff happen, and have kept their mouth shut, because we move through life much easier as women if we do. And now it's 2020 and 2019, 2018, and we're not keeping our mouth shut anymore. We're going, hey, listen to us. We've got a story we need to tell you. So change will happen, and change is happening.
Yeah. So, Susie, tell me, you were protected by anonymity. Why did you waive that? Why did you come out and put yourself on the line for all of those things that you talked about?
I came out. I waived my anonymity last year. I've been following what's been happening in the world with cases around the world, the Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, what's happening with, I should say, the success of the court cases and the change that's happening. And in our country, Australia, the Me Too movement has ground to a halt here because of the defamation laws in our system, in our court system. We need to update our defamation laws so they're more in line with New Zealand's legislation, because at the moment, witnesses don't have the right to come forward because if you have, I'm not going to mention any names here, right? But we have had cases here recently of famous actors who have money, who have, where women have come forward and said, hey, and it's gone to court, and the famous actors with the money have won because of our defamation laws. And the victims who have a right to come forward and talk about their abuse are being not treated in the way that they should, not treated in a way that of equality, and allowed to be thrown to the wolves with the press and be judged unmercifully, where people make a choice who to believe, whether it's the perpetrator or not. And with me, like with my, you know, people made a choice to believe Rolf Harris. They would not believe that he would do anything untoward. Millions of people around the world would have hated me for being Buffy and being the strongest witness, you know. That's why I was so grateful that I got what I got, but I still would have done it anyway because, you know, I'm not on Twitter and I don't listen to tweets and whatever, you know. But, you know, it still would have affected me. You know, I, for a month I was Googling myself, and there were stories about me all around the world. And it was interesting. And even at the court, you know, there was actually one story and that'll have all different names attached to it. And occasionally they throw in things like feisty. Someone called me short once. Well, I'm not short. I'm
short.
feisty. I know.
What's the
But
media to get wrong?
reading about what people say about you, and it can become very harmful. So it's better that, you know, there's more positivity. Look, and I needed, after the Mrs. Australia Earth experience, my self-esteem was much higher. I was very comfortable being in the public eye. I was comfortable with speaking on stage. And I wasn't happy with what was happening in the world. Well, I was happy with what's happening with the world, but not in Australia. And I knew that we needed reminding in Australia that we have had a win, because as far as I'm concerned, both the Hey Dad and Rolf Harris, even though it's British Australia, there was Australian victims and British victims, and Australian women have come forward and we've had a win. And now we need to come forward, all of us as a group, and make some change by banding together as a big group and using people power to get things changed, to get our law changed. Because if we don't put our hands up and go, hey, this sucks, why don't we use, you know, what's happening in the world now to catch up with the rest of the world, so victims do have the right to come forward, that would be really good. In my journey, look, I've met some and spoken to some really big women in Australia who are part of the movement here. Tracy Spicer, who has won a Peace Award, which is wonderful for her big stories on the Me Too movement as a journalist. She also helped set up an organisation called Now Australia, which is the Me Too movement go-to place in Australia. Now I've spoken with these people. I spoke to them with these lovely women before I went and spoke to the ABC 7:30 report, which is where I waived my anonymity about my coming out as the Rolf Harris bad character witness. And I discovered in talking to them that they, because of the defamation laws, they don't actually encourage victims to go forward or to come forward. There's nowhere for victims to go. It's not a big enough organisation that it could be. They can't work with me, and she told me that she couldn't work with me because I actively came forward and spoke about my story. So I'm opposite to her, and I'm all about women coming forward and stepping up and telling their story. And I'd love to be able to change the laws so that we can help an organisation like Now Australia support the victims, you know, and be able to really work as it's supposed to, and give everyone a chance to actually really step up into their power if they have a story to tell. That's the truth. And, you know, and now companies like a place like Now Australia actually teaches you how to, what you need to come forward. You know, you can't just say, hey, I'm not happy with this, what happened. I came forward. I had witnesses from way back when. You know, I never kept my mouth shut. I told every man his dog. who the worst person in the world had worked. Every time I'd get asked all the time, who's the most famous person, who's the best and the worst person you've worked with. The best person would always change depending on what stars I'd worked with. The worst person was always him. So my story never really changed. It was never a secret with me, but sometimes victims will come forward, and if they have nothing and they've told no one and it's a historical case, it's really hard to prove anything. But now Australia and organisations like that and coaches can really help these women deal with things that happened in their past. And my journey over the last couple of years, I've met so many amazing women, and I've had my own coach as well. The lovely Tracy Horton, who helps guide me through life. It's like a coach, manager, best friend, buddy, and I've met women that, have supported me, just becoming my friends and reopening my life like we're new buddies. It's just been wonderful. And I didn't have this before. I have this collective of women around me, which is wonderful. And I really believe in female power. So I felt comfortable to waive my anonymity. I did it with one of the reporters who had contacted me when I was in England. I approached her, and together we worked on what my story was going to be. And we had a camera crew come to my house and record me, and she came here as well. I have written a book, and I've recorded a book about my story, about my journey being a woman. It's called Staring Down Rolf Harris. I did almost have I had Booktopia, who actually for months said they were going to publish me, and it went all the way to the very top and saw all their lawyers, but there's too many things that have to change in there, too many liable things. So I have to tweak it a little bit first, so nobody gets, and not so much to do with him, but other things that I've mentioned, other times in life where I've been a little bit too honest. I have to cap it a little bit.
It's a precarious system we have, isn't it, Suzi? Because when you have the truth and you're backed by the truth, you're backed by people who've witnessed it and seen it, it's almost like the Australian system is afraid of looking itself in the mirror and really protecting those who deserve to be protected.
I think people, if they have such a fear of being judged. What will he or she say about me? What will they think about me? I'm the sort of person who actually doesn't give a shit, because my beliefs, as long as they're the right beliefs, doing what I did really had nothing to do with me. It was all about what I was doing for the women who were little girls, and that was such a strong driver for me. To put myself out there, because it so wasn't about me. For me, when I was over there, there was a woman who was 49. She was a victim of his. She had to give evidence in the courtroom standing behind a blanket. She couldn't look at him. She was that affected by him, and she was 49. And that just breaks my heart. That's what people don't realise. It's funny. So many of us and so many celebrities have also come out and told stories. And I saw a story. My life was changed when I was 12, because I was sexually assaulted when I was 12. And it changed so much. I had this man I was working with stick his hand inside my top and feel my breast underneath my little bra, which might not sound like much. Funnily enough, the same thing happened to Ellen. But it completely changed my life, so much so of how I saw my body. And I did have big boobs, as I've mentioned. All I wanted to do was cut them off. I ended up having a breast reduction and removing half of my breasts so they weren't so big, so they didn't attract so much attention. And by doing that, I really felt so much better about myself. I had to cut off what so many people, men, had wanted. It was weird. It's a weird journey for all of us and how it affects all of us. Some people go through horrendous, men and women, horrendous abuse when they're younger, and it's just so unfair. There's so many things we could focus on. I decided, because and like I said, this didn't affect me. What happened to me when I was 12, oh my God, that affected me. Wearing baggy clothes that I was doing for Rolf Harris was the very last man who ever crossed my zone of comfort again. He was the very last man who ever touched me. No man ever touched me after that. I became very mouthy. My use of the F word became prolific and beautiful. I can give you so many meanings and put so many uses in it and make it a thing of beauty in a sentence to make you go away. I developed the smartest mouth ever, So, these things empower us, they destroy us, they build us up. We learn by our experiences in life. I came forward and put myself out there because the time was right for me. The time was right for the world. And I needed to remind Australia by using myself as the example of a really good win against a really big, famous, rich man, that we can do this. And we can come forward and let's make it. I came forward because I wanted to use it to make it worthwhile, to make change. And I was happy to use myself as an example. And I was happy to be judged. And I have been, because there's still people out there who are Rolf lovers. I even had one woman who is a pageant queen who said to me, if she hadn't have met me and known me, she would never have believed me. But because she knows who I am and she, we know each other. She now realizes that Rolf was guilty, even though he'd been like, babe, he's gone to jail, But anyway,
it's a crazy world.
They form opinions. They choose. We all choose what to think about in life. So, I think it would be a good thing for us to choose to actually use these journeys that we have to make change. And to educate people about making change in life and in our judicial system and in the laws that we have. And look at the power the governments have over us right now. They've just shut us all down, and we've obeyed, which is great because we're saving our lives and everything else. But we've also got power, the power of social media. And I'm thinking, we get a petition together, something really easy. Let's all sign something. I'm not asking everybody to come out and throw themselves out in front of the world like I did. I'm just looking for something that we can use that can be really potent in this time where there's a lot of bored politicians sitting around. Wouldn't it be nice for us to take advantage as a group, especially on Obsessed Hub, because this is my obsession, social justice and equality for all. And I know there's lots of smart people out there. Now, I'm technologically challenged, so I reckon 2 of the 3 guys that this was probably my fault. And I know we've got lawyers out there. I want to find out what the what it's called. It's got to have some sort of number. What's the defo number? Hashtag defo, no defo number. We need to find out the number, the actual legislation. I don't know how to do that. I've asked Tracy Spicer and she said, like New Zealand system. I have no idea how to look up that. But there's lawyers here. We all know so many people, so many smart people. I'm a hair and makeup artist. I'm happy to be the face of this, but I don't have the brains and the smarts to find out all the things, but we all do as a collective. And wouldn't it be great as a collective to put all our collective smarts together and our marketing genius like you to find out the best way and the most potent way to make something go bang across Australia, alert people to our defo laws, make some change, say, hey, there's millions of people here that want the next generation and this generation to be able to have some better rights, to be able to stand up and go, no, this is no good. We need more rights. We need to be able to have a say. So this is why I've come forward.
To make it about fairness and justice instead of how much money you've got in the bank.
Yes, that's
what it comes
right.
down to, isn't it?
Right.
Is we've got
no money out of coming forward, just so people know. People seem to think that when you come forward for TV or anything or magazines that you get, there must be millions of that. No, I've made no money. Okay, so you all know, no money. No, and 3 people bought my book, my audio book. One was my husband. One was my beautiful, famous chef Kate over in America, and one was a random. Yay! So basically, I had one sale. So I'm stoked, mate.
You're not retiring on the profits of coming forward, Suzi Dent. You are indomitable, amazing, and just so brave and inspirational. And we've been talking for an hour, and I'm sure that we could talk for longer, but we can't. Maybe we could do a series. So I think Suzi's put a few challenges out there for our Obsessed With group. What Suzi's talking about is so incredibly needed in this country, is that people are being silenced because they don't have the money, they don't have access to the law, but they have a truth that needs to be heard. And I know with Obsessed With is that's one of our motivations, is to give people a platform to speak their truth. Suzi, my hat off to you. I've put in some links in the comment boxes there. The story that ran in ABC, a photo of Suzi with her crown on, and a link to Now Australia. And over to you, people, because I know there are a lot of really talented and smart people in this group that can help Suzi be the change that she wants to see in this country so more people can come forward. Suzi, thank you very much. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeanette. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Let's get together and make some real change. It's going to be amazing.
Yes.